you know it's time. IAfootball is back, and we've got you covered with everything from the biggest hits to the biggest runs, from in-game highlights to post-game breakdowns.
We are here talking any and all high school football.
From day one all the way to the dome, we've got you covered at IAfootball.
Welcome in, everybody. A special Wednesday show. We don't usually have a show today, but we have one today because playoffs are around the corner. I got our guy, Quinn Douglas, hopping on. Quinn does an insane job at predicting and projecting these pods, these brackets, whatever it is, and I get so many questions asking, where are we going? Who are we going to play? Well, this is not official. I can't say that enough. This is a fun prediction, but this is a good idea as to what this might look like, and these are based on if playoffs started today. Quinn did not say, oh, this team's going to go win week 8 and week 9, and then this is going to happen. This is based off today. Quinn does a fantastic job. Go give him a follow. On Twitter is his main thing. He's got Instagram, all that good stuff. Quinn, I appreciate you joining me today.
Yeah, not a problem, Kay. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I say we get right into it because we got 7 classes to go through. We'll start with the easiest one, Quinn. If you want to kind of talk about how Class 5A is built, it's pretty much the most straightforward one.
Yeah, 5A is pretty easy. Just think of it like whenever you see the regions for March Madness for NCAA basketball, that's pretty much what 5A is. 1 through 8, got the 1 seed versus the 8 seed in the second round, 4v5, 3v6, 2v7. Then that's just in theory, assuming all win. But that's pretty much how it sets up. Now, there's sometimes it gets a little tricky. Like, say, I know last year Pleasant Valley was the number 1 seed, and if a 16 seed was like, I don't know, like for example, like a Sioux City school, I don't think the state's going to send them all the way across the state. But thankfully, right now, that's not the case. They're, all the 5A schools are pretty much within a reasonable distance within each other in these 5A pods.
Yes, exactly. So using the latest IHSAA RPI, oh, that's a mouthful, but using that, this is what it would look like if the season ended today. Now, a lot's going to change these next 2 weeks because these guys have 2 more games. But if you want to pause it and look at this is what it looks like. But we got more to talk about. We're off to Class 4A. Now, 4A and 3A, a little bit more complicated, Quinn. I know this has to do a lot with regions. It has to do with district champs. It has to do with runner-ups, wild cards. Just kind of briefly talk about how you kind of came up with this. You don't have to go specifically, but, I mean, this is a great first look at what that could look like.
Yeah, so with 4A, and this will be the case with 4A all the way through A player. What the state tries to do is they take the top 4 teams in their rankings or their RPI for the bigger schools, rankings for the smaller schools, and they try to have them in their each individual pod. So right now, the top 4, I believe, right now are Xavier and Decorah, which is right now number 1 versus number 2 coming up this Friday night, and then North Polk and Gilbert are 3 and 4. So it gets into an interesting conversation because obviously right now, you've got 2 of the top 4 that are 2 seeds. Now, what was baked into these pods is that usually the highest rated 2 seeds in the RPI usually host a home playoff game first round. So it's not an automatic they have to go on the road. The 2 highest teams, the 2 highest seeded 2 seeds usually host a playoff game. So right now, what I've got is Decorah, North Scott going up there, Gilbert hosting Lamar's, and a lot of it too is geographical. It can be a little bit tricky, especially once we get to 3A here in a minute. 3A gets a little bit tricky considering most of the teams in the playoff are along and north of Interstate 80. But, geography, once it gets down to it, once you can find the matchups, geography has a lot to do with it. And obviously in 4A in the bigger schools, there are sometimes you can't avoid the long road trip. Like North Polk to Glenwood or Lamar's to Gilbert, they have to go somewhere. So those are the ones. And also you try to avoid rematches in the second round. I know the state has always been at least as of late, has been trying to be very cognizant of trying to avoid rematches when possible. So that also factors into it as well. So I try to make sure the state avoids, they try to avoid the rematches and also make sure it's not a haul. They try to limit the amount of long hauls they possibly can.
Yeah, especially in the first round, I think is when they really try to avoid the rematch. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. The Braves first round. Second round, if you got two teams in the same district in the same pod, that's absolutely
Right.
not
It's
out of the
gonna happen.
ordinary.
It's gonna
So,
happen. Yeah, there's
yeah.
there's only so many places these teams go, but this is what Quinn had for Class 4A this week. Again, go ahead and pause, check it out. The parentheses is the district that they're coming from. I guess I should
Mhm.
mention that. So that is where Quinn's kind of building out which district's going where and which champs going where. So that's what that looks like. Class 3A, you said was a little bit of a mess. Quinn, talk me through that.
Yeah. Yeah. 3A is a mess just because, like I said, almost, I think the only teams that are not north or along or north of Interstate 80 is really Winterset because Atlantic's only a few miles off Interstate 80. So, yeah, very little in the way of teams in 3A that are, south of I-80, so that can make traveling a little hectic. I see some long road trips. I mean, Atlantic to Bishop Heelan, that's definitely not a short trip. Sioux Center going to Clear Lake, that's not a short trip either. And like I said, it goes by the same rules, trying to avoid those, inter-district or first round rematches that the state tries hard to make sure they don't run into unless it's absolutely necessary that they have to do it. And also trying to make sure that we are splitting up the top four teams and doing so in an even manner. Because right now, for a great example right now, kind of a mess it is. Heelan's in the top four. Sioux Center is the number 3 team in District 1 right now. Humboldt, if the season ended today, would be the 2 seed in District 1. But Sioux Center's 5th in the RPI. So this is where it gets really interesting. And also travel does come to affect a lot as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know Quinn the night after week 9 is going to be building these pods and predicting himself. I know I'm going to be doing it too. And odds are both of us are going to be wrong. That's the thing. There's so many different scenarios, but you start with what you can rule out, at least. I'm guessing that's how the state kind of goes about it. You kind of start with what you know and you go backwards from there. So again, it's all just educated guessing, but it's fun to try and give people an idea, and that's exactly what this is. So you're right, Sioux Center really high in the RPI, but number 3 in their district right now, which pushes them on the road in a pot if the season were to end today. So this is what Class 3A looks like. Again, go ahead and pause that if you like. We are off though to small classes, and small classes, I'll run through it quickly. 32 teams make the playoffs. 2A, 1AA is a little bit more simple. All the 1 seeds host all the 4 seeds. All the 2 seeds host all the 3 seeds. Now, Quinn, it has nothing to do with pairing districts. District 1 doesn't go to District 2. It has nothing to do with that, correct?
No. Usually that's how it's going to. A lot of the time, that is how it's going to play out. But
Right.
sometimes districts get so wonky that you'll have some like a Grandview Christian going to Roland Story, because even though Roland Story is in District 4, Grandview Christian in District 8 is a lot closer than, say, Crestwood in District 3. So.
Right, no doubt. So this is a great look at what it could look like. Again, this is if the standings were used today. All the 1 seeds hosting all the 4 seeds. I mean, there's some really good 4 seeds out there, Quinn. I see you have Spirit Lake over Unity Christian. You like that? Is that the kind of scariest 4 seed you see right now in Class 2A?
Spirit Lake has played really well here in the back half of the season. They had a really tough schedule to open up this season. That's a good program up. Coach Beloit up in northwestern Iowa. Obviously they don't have the horses they've had the last couple of years, but still a good program. Unity Christian, they took a lot of lumps in non-district play. District play has been a totally different story for Unity Christian, but I like Spirit Lake and that 1v4 if that winds up being the case for that District 1 versus District 2 battle.
Right, no doubt. And then 2s and 3s, you got OAB, CAG with a little upset, and then Albert at 2. Both teams highly ranked, and those would be a lot of fun matches. But taking Quinn's picks here, if this were to match up, you then go into what we did for 3A and 4A, and you build these pods out. Quinn, what'd you kind of see in Class 2A for building these out? You got more districts to play with, that's for sure.
Yeah, and in 2A, it's sort of the same thing we talked about with 4A. There's a couple teams, or at least one team that right now is second in their district. That's Okoboji, but they're ranked in the top 4 according to the IHSAA rankings. So they would get their own pod, and right now it's sort of who has to get set Northwest. And right now, I look at Roland Story. Well, a team I know you guys have ranked highly. I had them in my top 10 this week for the Radio Iowa High School football poll, but. it's a Rolling Story team that the state does not have ranked, and it would make sense if they get sent Northwest. Kind of maybe I'm a bit of a homer, but I feel like there are very few teams out there that Rolling Story can't compete with. So I think that would make a really fun and interesting Pod A district or Pod A there with them hosting OABCIG and then getting the winner of what would be a rivalry rematch with Okoboji and Spirit Lake. Elsewhere, Bellevue, they're right outside of the top four, but being in the same pod with Osage, that would work out. I believe with Osage, I think is actually take that back. I think Bellevue is actually in the top four. Osage is right outside the top four. Elsewhere, in Pod C, PCM, they're in the top. I think IHSA has them number 2. Mid Prairie, really good 6 seed. They're kind of on the outside looking into that top 4. And then Pod D, Kemper Catholic, number 1 team in the state, has been all year long. And then Van Meter, a surprising year where Van Meter's not the top seed in their pod, but it's definitely still not a team to be slept on with Coach Trudeau and company.
Yeah, no doubt a scary draw, but this is where like a lot can change. I mean, Centerville PCM,
yes,
that game flips. So this can change drastically, and I mean we'll find out Friday night what these or maybe Saturday morning. I guess I'm not really sure what those opening round matchups
don't forget
are.
Clarinda Woodward Granger. That's a big one. Clarinda wins that one. They won the district.
There you go.
On Friday night. So that's a big one.
Yeah, plenty can change in Class 2A. This is what Quinn has. We will move on to 1A, which, in my opinion, is one of the more intriguing classes in Iowa this year. Just the top heaviness that is. Quinn, here's this 1 versus 4. So he's got all the 1 seeds winning and only 1 3 seed. If you do look at the 4 seeds, though, Quinn, which 4-1 or which 4 seed, I guess, not maybe the matchup, which 4 seed team kind of intrigues you the most as someone that could go and pull a shocker? I mean, I think Tri-Center pops off to me right away.
Tri-Center, but that's a tough pull with going up against West Lyon, a team that is, if somebody wanted to make an argument, West Lyon has been the number 1 team over Grundy Center, I would listen to it. This year, those two are neck and neck. So, I mean, Tri-Center, they can throw the football, which is something that can be a great equalizer, especially in small classes. If I had to look, right off the rip, there's a couple right away that catch my attention, and that is Central Springs and Columbus Catholic and Appleton Parkersburg versus Beckman Catholic. No shade to the private schools that they've had really good seasons, but AP, that they've held in pretty well with Dyke New Hartford early in the year. That's a big rivalry game. That they did what they could against Grundy Center in non-district play. They've had a couple bumps in the road in district play. Central Springs as well. I think they played a really underrated District 3 that is home to not only South Hardin and Grundy Center. Clarion Goldfield Owls, and I like their matchup with Hudson in the 2 versus 3. With how physical CGD is at the point of attack this year. So that's an underrated district with District 3. I could see Central Springs giving Columbus Catholic a lot of troubles in the first round.
There you go. I mean, the value, though, of being a top 2 seed in your district, you get a team coming to you. That's a huge value. But you're right with that Tri-Center thing. Like, that's a perfect geography example. There's only so many places that they could realistically go and play. So that makes a ton of sense, and that would be a tough job. But using, again, Quinn's picks in Class 1A, this is what the pods would look like, and it's super interesting here. I mean, Regina Catholic in Pleasantville just pops off the page at me, and then West Marshall in that pod with Trainer. Trainer's been a really, really good team all year. What kind of stands out to you in the pods that you built yourself, but what kind of stands out?
Yeah, so the top 4 teams from the IHSAA right now are West Lyon, or Grundy Center, West Lyon, Regina's 3, and then South Hardin, I believe, is still 4. And actually, then they actually might be Trainer 4, but pretty much Pod D is the one I think that's going to stand out most to people with some of the road trips there. Richview having to go down to Trainer. South Hardin, West Marshall, that is a rematch from the regular season, and that is one I think was pretty much unavoidable just because of the location and where everybody else has to go. But South Hardin, I mean, they get a pod to themselves because right now they are number 4. I think a South Hardin Trainer battle for the Dome would be a very, I think everybody would agree that's a 5 versus 4, where that's as close as maybe the closest quarterfinal game you'll have. But also, I don't want to throw any shade at Pleasantville because they are a very good football team. Their one loss, they had a number of injuries in that game with I-35 against Regina Catholic. And a little something interesting to note about that District 7, Cade, is that I was doing a little bit of research last night on that District 7. Pretty much that District 7, those top 3 teams, I-35, West Marshall, and Pleasantville, they have all beaten one another. So what that means is it's going to come down to point differential. It pretty much is going to come down who beats their opponent the worst will come away with a district title in that District 7. with that 17-point tiebreaker.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think I don't I have it on our cheat sheet. I think West Marshall's 17 point is at 9.3, and I think Pleasantville's at 9.0. So
Yeah, that would not
assuming,
surprise me.
yeah, if they both win by 17, West Marshall will win the district because
Yes.
that's the only that's the thing is the highest you can go is 17. So yeah, it's extremely interesting. I think looking at it, I think that's how it's going to soar is West Marshall, Pleasantville, Interstate 35. I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to look. Again, those are just ranking, or those are standings we calculate ourselves, so there could be an error somewhere for sure. But Class 1A, a ton of fun. Moving on to Class A, same thing again for 2A and 1A. 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. The lone upset you have is Maquoketa Valley against Danville. What's a 4 seed though? I know we talked about it with the 1A. What's a 4 seed that kind of intrigues you as someone that could go and pull something? Also, I noticed you had Wapello twice and you didn't have AHSTW, so I slid AHSTW in at
gotcha.
So I don't know. I'm assuming that makes kind of sense. So but that was the
a lot of times I make these at nighttime and maybe my brain isn't firing on all cylinders at that point. But yeah, but a 4 seed that stands out to me, I tell you what. St. Ansgar, really good football team. They cannot sleep on West Fork. West Fork, a very physical football team. Saw them early in the year when they played Eagle Grove. They run a lot of wing T stuff. So they're physical at the point of attack. Got a couple really solid running backs. Quarterback who's a really good decision maker as well. That's one that stands out to me. And another one that stands out to me is Earlham. Taking on ACGC. I know ACGC, they're a top 4 team, although they've had a couple of close calls throughout the year. Earlham under Chris Caskey, they've always been a consistent football team since he's been the head coach there, and they're always physical at the point of attack. And if you want a game that could get black and blue pretty quickly, that ACGC Earlham game I think could be a real interesting one, depending on how who comes out of the gate hot in that one.
Yeah, the clock might never stop running in that game for sure. But
there's a couple in A especially that you might be out of there before 8:45.
No doubt. And even that 2 seed Danville, Maquoketa Valley, Danville just gave Pekin everything they could handle last week. I mean that's a 2 seed that's really intriguing. And Maquoketa Valley, a preseason number 1 team in multiple polls, and now finds themselves possibly going on the road. That's not an easy draw for anyone for sure.
No, it's not, especially with Danville's location being so remote compared to a lot of the other teams in Class A. In Maquoketa Valley, they've been battling through injury. That's been a lot of what has kind of led them to struggle a little bit at times this year. As injuries have really bit them, but they are still a supremely talented football team that you cannot take lightly. And I definitely think they can come out of the first round with a win if they even if traveling all that way down to Danville from Northeast Iowa.
No doubt. Well, using these picks, the pods that Quinn has as of right now looks as so. I mean, one thing that stands out, Pod A, we could possibly have another West Sioux MMCRU matchup. That's not an easy pod nonetheless. I guess that's what stands out to me right away when I built this. Quinn, what kind of stands out to you?
Yeah, and a lot of that does have to do with the fact that that is the location coming into play.
Right, no doubt.
And obviously West Sioux just lost MMCRU, but like we talked about, we avoid the first round rematch with that. As tell you what, Woodbury Central West Sioux, that might be you may not find a better round of 30 or round of 16 game in the entire state that weekend than Woodbury Central versus West Sioux. That one could go right down to the wire. Elsewhere, St. Ansgar, West Hancock. St. Ansgar, I think throughout the year, talent-wise, I think St. Ansgar is the best team in Class A, just from what I have seen from them. They're big, they're fast, they're strong, they're athletic. They really do not have a weakness on their football team, and I think they could set up they would have a tough matchup with Maquoketa Valley in the round of 16. But tell you what, a St. Ansgar West Hancock quarterfinal, I think everybody would sign up for that again. Pod C, Northland, they've really kind of come out as a team that I don't think a lot of people were talking about before the year. They put together an excellent season over at Northland. Linville Sully, they kind of have to make a bit of a road trip if they are to knock off Wapsie Valley, and that's another great game in the round of 16 with the way Wapsie Valley's played. Wapsie Valley's still undefeated, like I said, but right now they're sitting number 2 thanks to point differential. And then Pod D, you got a lot of teams there that are pretty familiar with each other. ACGC and St. Albert, maybe not so much. Pekin and Madrid, they played last year in Madrid. Madrid won in a shutout. Obviously, Madrid and ACGC played earlier this year. They played in the quarterfinals back in 2023. That is one. If Madrid can get Loken Velke back, a quarterback, I know he's been out with an injury. I believe they're expecting him back for the postseason. If he can get back to playing the level he was before he got hurt, Madrid as a 2 seed could very well be a team that could surprise a lot of people, I think.
No, that's a great point. Madrid with Velke they're not a 2 seed. That's for sure, and that'd be a scary draw nonetheless. But that's what Class A looks like. Go ahead and pause it if you want to keep looking at it. We are off to 8-man though. Little bit of a different scenario here. Still kind of the same mentality here. I separated by the 1 seeds and the 2 seeds. A few 1 seeds get faced off with the wild cards, I guess you can call it, and then a few 2 seeds. Well, a few 2 seeds will face another 2 seeds just because of how it goes. But looking at this, I mean, it's really hard to pick Class 8 player upsets. I guess what kind of stands out in a 1 seed matchup where you could see some havoc being caused?
I really like that matchup between Don Bosco and Clarksville. Clarksville's got a really prolific rushing attack, and they are a team that they can very well give teams trouble. They've been a consistent program the last couple of years. Don Bosco, they've tripped up a couple times, albeit to some really good teams such as Gladbrook, Rhinebeck, and as well as Edgewood, Colesburg. But I definitely think Clarksville can give Don Bosco a game in a 1 versus 3. And another one I would just keep my eye on. I don't know if they come away with a win. I think Audubon versus Lennox could be closer than what people think. Lennox is a team. They were really young at the start of the year. They replaced a lot in the last couple of years, but they have a good program down at Lennox. And I would not be surprised if that is a close game in the 4th quarter between Audubon and Lennox.
There you go. Well, same type of mentality here. You take these winners and you build your pods. Some interesting stuff here. Class 8 players, super top heavy, some really good 8-man quarterfinal games. There always are an 8-man. There are always some incredible 8-man quarterfinal games. Woodbine Audubon would be one that just immediately piques my interest. A rematch, Iowa Valley, Don Bosco. I mean, the storylines are abundant in 8-man. I guess what kind of do you see here?
Yeah, and this is one where kind of location played a factor again, especially with Pod A. Northwest Iowa, there just aren't that many 8-player teams, so there are going to be some long road trips. Bishop Garrigan, Kingsley Pearson having to go to Bishop Garrigan. Collins Maxwell gets pulled up from District 6 to go up to GTRA to kind of even things out there. Pod B, tell you what, Gladbrook, Rhinebeck, and Edgewood, Colesburg could be one heck of a quarterfinal. But Gladbrook, Rhinebeck's got past a pretty darn good Easton Valley team that I think some people are forgetting about where they were earlier in the year. In terms of Pod C, I like Iowa Valley and Don Bosco both in their matchups, although Southeast Warren could definitely give Don Bosco a lot to handle, but that could be a really good quarterfinal. Like you said, Woodbine in Audubon. Audubon versus Bedford, I feel could be like a pretty good matchup. I feel like Bedford has gone under the radar a little bit this year, but Woodbine versus Audubon for the quarters. And like you said, 8-player is pretty top heavy. There are 2 teams I think that are right at the top of the class, and in Garrigan and Woodbine, I think they're 1 and 2, and then I think there's a bit of a gap, and then the rest of the field. But it doesn't mean that though neither of those 2 could lose before we get to the Dome or lose before they get to the final.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the IHSA rankings really come into factor here, because with their top 4 teams, that's what's important. I mean, there could be a million polls in Iowa, but those IHSA top 4 teams are basically who hosts the pods, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Perfect.
That's the anchor in those pods.
Yeah, it's hard for people to understand that, and I get it because it is confusing. But that's the way they go by it. But that was a ton of fun, Quinn. 25 minutes of just absolute high school football postseason preview. Again, go give Quinn a follow. He's going to have these up on Twitter if he doesn't already. I'm sure he's going to try and do it next week again too. We're going to find out a lot this Friday. Quinn, I appreciate you joining in. And I mean, high school football postseason, there's nothing like it, and it's going to be here before we know it, literally.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly it always catches up to you that end of the regular season. Talking with Webster City coach Andy Brim on Friday, he always is amazed at how fast the season goes, and hard to believe it's already the middle of October and playoff football is right around the corner.
Yeah, we're gonna be underneath the dome roof before you know. Well, I appreciate you joining me, Quinn. Again, go give him a follow. He does a ton of great stuff on his account. A lot of good stuff for Iowa high school football, and we will see you guys next time.